My cheating wife, who abandoned me during my hospitalization, now seeks forgiveness after 12 long years. Hi, I'm Jason, and 47. I want to share my life incident here to get some advice. This goes back to 12 years ago, when I was married to Susan, my first wife. I was married for 7 years with 2 children, Laura and Lucas, who were 5 and 3 at the time. We were leading a regular life until one fateful day. One morning, as I was driving to my office, a speeding vehicle from the opposite direction rammed into my car. The next thing I remember is waking up on a hospital bed, covered in bandages and plasters. The nurse informed me that I had woken up after 2 days in a coma. Grateful for the new life, little did I know about the disaster that was about to unfold. After a week of my treatment, my doctor informed me that my lower body was paralyzed, and I might never be able to walk again. Shattered, Susan broke down at this news, as she had to manage the house and the children. I fell into depression, unable to comprehend my life in a wheelchair. I spent my days staring at the empty walls of my hospital room, cursing how my life turned upside down. I dreaded the fact that I would never be able to play soccer with my children, dance with my wife, and be free again. To add to my miserable life, Susan stopped visiting me in the initial days of my stay. She brought the children thrice a week, and those moments became the only ones I lived for. But as the days passed, their visits became scarce. I pleaded with her to bring the children to visit me, but she would say that the children didn't want to meet me so often. Feeling hopeless, one day she handed me the divorce papers, saying she couldn't spend her life with a handicapped man. Claiming she deserved a normal man, she left, and I was left wheelchair-bound, destitute, and divorced with no income or savings. After paying for the household expenses and children's education, savings were off the radar. Luckily, insurance covered my hospital bills to some extent. I had to liquidate my savings for the remaining expenses, and in the end, I was left with nothing. I wanted to yell, smack my head against the wall, and curse my fate. I don't know how I held myself together back then, but something inside kept me sane. Probably the fire of taking revenge. After being discharged, I shifted to my parents' house. I was 35, divorced, with no income, and dependent on my 62-year-old mother, physically and financially. My mother ran a small florist shop in the suburbs, and with her meager income and pension money, she supported me. It was the most troubling feeling for a 35-year-old man to depend on his elderly mother. Soon after my discharge, I went to meet my children. When I reached my house, it was locked. The neighbors told me Susan had shifted to her lover's house with the children. According to my neighbors, Susan's lover was a fat old man who had been divorced thrice, but was filthy rich and had no children. Some labeled Susan a gold digger and criticized her for sleeping with a grumpy old man for his fortune. I managed to get the address of her boyfriend and reach his house. Susan didn't let me meet my children, saying they had already adjusted to her boyfriend and apparently called him daddy. She threatened me with a restraining order when I insisted on meeting my children. I didn't have a penny to spend on a lawyer, surviving on my mother's meager income, so I backed off. It was less than 6 months after my accident, and only a few months after my divorce. She was already living with another man. I felt disgusted. I asked her how she could abandon me and move on so quickly. Immature, I know. I was a helpless, wheelchair-bound father. What else could I do? I pleaded with her for at least one chance to prove my worth. She belittled me, saying that I was a burden in her life. I asked her if she cheated on me before the divorce, because our divorce was settled a month ago, and she was already living with her lover. She shooed me away, saying that it was not my business, and that I should never show my ugly face to her. I kept staring at her, contemplating my 7 years of married life with that woman who replaced me with another man in a few months. I left the place with teary eyes, feeling defeated by the humiliation. I cried like a 5-year-old in front of my mother, who consoled me and motivated me to take charge of my life. Clueless and directionless, I joined my mother in her shop, helping her make bouquets, serve customers, and clean the shop. Gradually, I realized the business had huge potential to grow. My mother was too fragile to do it herself, so I pulled out my old contacts to secure contracts with event management companies, eventually launching my own event management company. It took 12 long years to rebuild my life. My mother had my back all this while, supporting and motivating me to bounce back. I found out a year after my accident that Susan was taking my kids and her lover and fleeing the city. When I arrived at the home, my kids had already departed. I had hurried to meet them. Prior to that, I made several attempts to get in touch with my kids, but Susan would always insult me and push me away. I was unable to argue for shared custody since Susan was granted exclusive custody of the kids. Susan had a wealthy boyfriend named Evan, but I was too poor to hire a lawyer, so I was unable to contest her restraining order. I had no idea whether or not he was with her before to my injury, or how he had entered Susan's life out of the blue. All I knew about him was that he had a lot of family land and was a rich man. Over the past 12 years, I have attempted to meet my children every time I received leads, but I have been unsuccessful. Susan said that her partner had the resources and connections to get away with anything, so she would have me jailed. By the way, after living together for 12 years, that man never married Susan. I eventually applied for joint custody a year ago, patiently awaiting the stabilization of my event management company. I ultimately got 15 days when I applied for custody. Next week, they are flying to my place. Susan tried her hardest to challenge my plea in court, but I had a strong attorney who did an excellent job presenting my case, so I was granted 15 days. In addition, my grown-up children were asked if they would like to meet me and replied in the affirmative. Though I am aware that I will never be able to make up for the lost 12 years, I still want to spend time with my kids. I am excited and frightened all at once as the moment draws closer. Now they are 15 and 17. I am aware of how demanding today's teens may be. I pray that my kids aren't extremely cruel and poisonous. What tale Susan has told them over the past 12 years is unknown to me. Shall I be honest with them about their mother? I'm not sure. What recommendations do you guys have for this? How do I go about approaching them? I'm both quite anxious and very excited. First update. Hello everyone, I have a lot to share. In my initial post, I omitted 2 important details. First, a word about Emmy, my present wife. Yes, 5 years ago, I wedded a stunning woman. I met Emmy, an interior designer, at an event when we were providing the flowers, and she was designing the wedding site. I hadn't yet launched my own business at that point. Though we didn't fall in love right away, we had a good feeling. Over the next few months, we continued to get together for these kinds of occasions and grew close. Her daughter, who was 3 years old, was under her care alone. She had the contacts and industry experience from her many years of employment at one of the firms, which gave her the idea to launch the event management company. To start the business, I collaborated with her. We were together for a year after our first date. As of right now, Amy, her daughter Mia, my mother, and I make up a joyful family of 4. My mother and her kid were both thrilled to have a grandmother. The second piece of information concerned accident benefits. Ideally, the logistics firm that owned the vehicle would have paid me compensation because I was struck by a fast truck. However, at that time, the firm was able to avoid paying anything by falsifying the accident's details and placing the responsibility on me. I didn't get paid since I couldn't afford to employ a skilled attorney at the time. Big businesses, you know, are like this. They pay their lawyers a lot of money to save their asses. Emmy recommended that I refile the lawsuit when we were married since we could now afford a qualified attorney. Although the matter is still pending, my attorney has offered us encouraging indications that the verdict will be in our advantage. Now, let me return to my narrative. My children were meant to see me 3 months ago, as I indicated in my initial message, following a 12-year divorce. While I was anxious and eager, Emmy helped me to relax and encouraged me the entire time. I went to the airport to pick them up. Now, Laura, the older, is 15, and Lucas, the younger, is 13. They have become into stunning and attractive adolescents. After exchanging pleasantries, we were at a loss for discussion. We were all 3 uncomfortable. As we drove home from the airport, I made an effort to strike up a conversation by inquiring about their schooling and the city. I purposefully avoided the discussion of their mother. They also didn't mention her. The kids were remarkably quiet, maybe waiting for a chance to sneak in some earbuds like any other adolescent. We got home and were met by Emmy. The children looked astonished, as if they had not anticipated this to occur. I don't know why Emmy surprised them. Her mother moved in with another guy a few months after our divorce, so why can't I be married again? Emmy had set up the guest room for the kids. While we were eating lunch together, Emmy explained the family's holiday itinerary. They responded to everything objectively. They weren't excited or skeptical about the plan. Their erratic response perplexed Emmy and me. Soon after they locked themselves in their room, their mother Susan called and accused me of lying to our kids. She claimed that the reason I brought the kids to my place was so Amy and I could control them. I was confused by her actions. She said that I was lying to her about my marital status. She kept calling, even after I hung up on her, because I couldn't believe what she was saying. I made the decision to confront the big issue. I asked my kids over the phone what was wrong. They hesitated a moment before speaking. They believed that I had abandoned them, which is why they were furious with me. Susan had filled the kids' minds with falsehoods and dishonesty, brainwashing them against me. I told them straight out that I didn't have a choice. As soon as their mother had the chance, she jumped to another guy. Even though they were just children at the time, they had vivid memories of those events. I explained to them how Susan had threatened and driven me away every time I attempted to get in touch with them, disappearing with them to the old man's place. I presented them with the restraining order along with all of my denied requests to meet with them. They were crying and felt bad for having spent so much time believing their mother's falsehoods. Lucas, my younger son, acknowledged that Susan saw him trying to contact me on social media. She used emotional coercion to get him to vow not to get in touch with her ever again. The kids also acknowledged that Susan's husband had chastised them. Because Susan and the kids were single, they suffered mistreatment at family get-togethers. Susan remained his mistress, even though the guy covered the cost of their schooling. They never saw him as a father figure. When I learned of my children's struggles, my heart hurt. We sobbed uncontrollably and held each other after disclosing everything. We had a terrific experience traveling to Florida for a week-long vacation. Emmy and Mia, who was 8 this year, grew close to Laura and Lucas. It makes me very happy to see my entire family together. My kids posted pictures of our group on social media with the phrase, "Happy Family." Susan phoned them up and chastised them for their irresponsible actions as soon as she viewed those photos. When they bonded with us, she accused them of betraying her. She threatened to stop allowing me to see my kids through text messages if I did anything to make them oppose her. I scoffed at her base threats and carried on with our travels. My kids visited with my relatives after they got back from their holiday, and they were graciously hosted by them. I was happy to see the rekindling of the old friendships. Susan threatened to break up with them, but they vowed to stay in touch as they prepared to depart. They stated they would move back with me after high school, since they felt suffocated in that house. I said farewell and gave them a hug. They confronted Susan about her evilness once they returned, but she turned the tables on me and said I was using them against her. Though they haven't been back for a few months, we still communicate frequently. I look forward to seeing them again. I'll keep you informed if anything changes. Many thanks. Second update. Hello everyone. I am aware that it has been a while since my last update. Drama has been prevalent during the past 6 months. 3 months ago, my children and I had our first meeting, and the legal dispute involving the logistics firm was resolved. What do you think? I received substantial compensation for both the accident and the unfairness of the first trial. I don't know if I brought this up during the first trial. The logistics business, whose truck collided with my vehicle, falsified documents and accused me of causing the collision. I received no payment at all as a result. My wife suggested that I appeal it again, and this time I was successful. My kids were just as thrilled when I told them the news. They requested to meet me, and I assured them that they would be living with me indefinitely. After a month, Susan arrived at my workplace. She grasped my hand and begged for my pardon. Her quick appearance surprised me. She said that she became desperate following my injury. An elderly man she came across desired a sugar baby. That day, I ran a Google search and discovered all these phrases. The man went away with his money after a few months from a younger woman, with whom he had a number of terrible experiences. He made the decision to settle down with a little older sugar girl. With 2 kids under her belt, Susan, who was 32 at the time, was sure to be devoted to her cause. The man had made it quite apparent that he did not want to share the fortune with my children. Therefore, he would not marry her and would instead keep her as his mistress. Since he assured her that he would provide for their food and education, Susan accepted his requirements. I questioned her about her lack of employment. She said that she had never worked and that she didn't know if she could pay for the kind of life that her partner had given her for nothing. She reiterated that she took all necessary precautions to safeguard the children's future. Standing on her property, she declared that if she hadn't taken that action, kids would have grown up in poverty. She was bugging me so much that I shouted at her, telling her that she should have at least given me a chance to calm down. She should have talked to me about her concerns if she was really worried about our kids' futures, rather than making snap judgments and leaving me in the dark. I explained that her entreaties were irrelevant since I had moved on. She recapped all of our wonderful memories together, including our wedding day and the births of our 2 kids. I dismissed her, telling her that all those memories had vanished and that I was now a different person. They held no significance for me. Saying that she and my kids were my original family instead of Amy and Mia was where she overreached herself. She argued that Mia was not my daughter, and that Amy and Mia would never make a good family. Her nasty mentality repulsed me. So that the genuine family might get back together, she insisted that I take her back. I expressed to her my affection for Amy and Mia, and that they, not she, are my true family. She made a scene and wouldn't leave my office. It was only when I threatened to call the police that she departed. I told my mother and Amy about this when I got home. Although Amy was understandably upset by this, she is a responsible adult and chose not to make a big issue out of it. My mother claimed that Susan's selfishness was the reason she was never fond of her. Mom went so far as to say that the money I got after the court settlement was the sole reason Susan came back to me. Indeed, the woman is a gold digger. My kids chastised their mother and warned her to stay in her lane once they found out about her actions. Her sugar daddy had threatened to put her away if she tried to contact me again. I'm not sure how he found out about this occurrence. I am really grateful to him. As of right now, my kids will be moving in with me this month. They would come and go from our house, and I would place them at a local college. They intended to reside in a dorm and have a good time while attending college. We should stay in touch, but we should also give ourselves time to get to know one another. After the children deserted Susan, all that was left for her was her sugar daddy. I'm hoping she gets to savor the sweets before it goes bad.